I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. My name is Mark, and I was married to Sarah for 7 years. We had what I thought was a fantastic relationship. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but we always managed to come out stronger. Sarah was beautiful, intelligent, and ambitious. She had a zest for life that drew me to her from the very start. We shared everything: dreams, laughter, even the mundane tasks of life. But lately, something felt off. At first, it was subtle, little things that I brushed aside. She began spending more time at the gym, saying she wanted to get in shape for summer. I didn't think much of it. I supported her goals, even if I was more of a couch potato. Her phone became an extension of her hand, and she was always texting or browsing, her face lit by that all-too-familiar blue glow. I tried to ignore the nagging feeling in my gut that told me something was amiss. After all, I trusted her. Then there were the dinners. We used to cook together, but lately she said she was too tired or too busy. That's when we hired a personal chef, Matt, who was fresh out of culinary school and eager to impress. He had this charming smile and a way of making even the simplest dishes feel extraordinary. I thought it would be a great way for us to enjoy gourmet meals without the stress of cooking. But as time went on, I noticed Sarah's laughter was reserved for him. One Saturday, I came home early from a round of golf with the guys. I wanted to surprise her with a little weekend getaway. When I walked in, the house was unusually quiet. I called out for her but was met with silence. It was strange, but I shrugged it off. Maybe she was in the shower. As I walked toward the kitchen, I noticed it was a mess: dishes piled high and half-eaten food left out. I was about to head upstairs when I caught a glimpse of Sarah's phone on the counter. Curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up to see a slew of messages pop up from someone named Matt. My heart sank as I opened the messages. They weren't just friendly banter. They were flirty, filled with emojis and innuendos. My hands shook as I read through the threads. "Can't wait to see you tonight," one read. "You're incredible," another said. It felt like a punch to the gut, but I needed to confirm what I suspected. I decided to confront her right then and there. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my mind was racing. Just as I was formulating what to say, Sarah walked in, fresh from a shower, her hair wet and her face glowing. She looked at me, then her phone, and I could see the panic flash across her face. "Mark, hey, you're home early," she stammered, trying to play it cool, but her eyes betrayed her. I held up her phone, my heart pounding. "Mind explaining this?" I asked, my voice shaking. The look in her eyes shifted from panic to defiance. "I can explain," she blurted out, her voice rising. "It's nothing, just harmless flirting." "Harmless, really? Is that what you call it?" The anger bubbled up inside me, and I could feel my face flush. "You're cheating on me, aren't you?" She looked away, her expression unreadable. "It's complicated, Mark. You've been distant. I needed someone to talk to, and Matt has been there for me." Her excuses felt like daggers. How could she do this? A flood of emotions surged through me: betrayal, anger, confusion. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I just stood there, stunned. She tried to reach out, claiming she could fix things. "We can work this out," she said, her voice laced with desperation. But I was too far gone in my hurt to listen. I felt utterly lost, like the ground had been pulled out from under me. My heart ached at the thought of my wife, the woman I loved, betraying me with someone we hired to cook our meals. I needed to think. I needed to escape the suffocating reality of this. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a twisted journey. I was about to embark on a path driven by pain and a burning desire for revenge. But first, I had to process the reality of what was happening. The emotional roller coaster had just started, and I was strapped in for the ride of my life. The days following the confrontation were hell. I felt like I was walking through a fog, every thought heavy with betrayal. Sarah tried to engage me in conversations about our relationship, but her words felt empty. She would talk about how we could work through this, how Matt meant nothing, but I couldn't hear her. The trust that had taken years to build crumbled to dust in an instant. I moved through our home like a ghost. The laughter we shared now echoed hauntingly in my ears. I could see her in every corner of the house: the kitchen where we cooked meals together, the living room where we cuddled on the couch during movie nights, even the bedroom once filled with intimacy and love. Now it all felt tainted. The thought of her with that chef, that smug little brat, gnawed at me. I had to find some way to channel this pain. While Sarah was out, I'd scroll through my phone, aimlessly searching for a distraction. I found myself delving into Michelin-star restaurant reviews, the kind of places I had always wanted to visit but never had the chance. My mouth watered as I read about the exquisite dishes, the artistry of the chefs, and the ambience that came with fine dining. With every review, the weight of my situation lifted just a little. What if I started treating myself to the very experiences she had denied me? The next evening, I decided to take the plunge. I made a reservation at a local Michelin-star restaurant that had been on my list for ages. I dressed up, feeling a spark of confidence return as I donned the blazer I hadn't worn in months. When I walked into the restaurant, the atmosphere enveloped me, soft lighting, the hum of polite chatter, and the tantalizing aroma of gourmet dishes being plated. I felt out of place at first, but then I realized I deserved this. I ordered a multi-course meal, savoring each bite like it was a small victory. The food was divine, and for the first time in weeks I found myself smiling. I took my time, appreciating the details of each dish, the flavors dancing on my palate. It was as if I was reclaiming parts of myself I had lost in the haze of heartbreak. Over the next few weeks, I continued to indulge. I explored more restaurants, each experience better than the last. I tried new cuisines, met intriguing people at the bars, and even struck up conversations with other diners. Each meal was a celebration of my independence. I was no longer just Mark, Sarah's husband. I was Mark, a man rediscovering who he was outside of his marriage. As I grew more comfortable in my new routine, I began thinking more about the revenge that simmered beneath the surface. It wasn't just about making Sarah feel the pain I felt. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I wanted her to see that I was thriving without her, that I could find joy and luxury on my own terms. One night, as I returned from another extravagant meal, I spotted Sarah's car parked outside our house. My heart raced. What was she doing here? I didn't want to confront her again. I just wanted to enjoy my night in peace. But the urge to see her reaction as I walked through the door, a contented man who no longer needed her, was overwhelming. When I stepped inside, I found her sitting on the couch, her face etched with worry. She looked up at me, her eyes widening as if she was seeing a stranger. "Mark, I was just about to call you. We need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. I looked at her, feeling a mix of anger and pity. "Talk about what?" "How you're spending time with Matt while I'm out living my life." My tone was sharper than I intended, but I couldn't hold back. Her face fell, and for a moment I thought I saw genuine remorse flicker across her features. "I made a mistake, Mark. I was lonely and you weren't there for me. I thought we could work through this, but you seem so distant now," she pleaded. "Distant? You're the one who pushed me away," I shot back. "You made your choice. You can't just expect me to forget while you sit here and act like nothing happened." She opened her mouth to respond, but I could see the fight drain out of her. I turned away, refusing to engage any further. I had spent enough time in our old dance of arguments and apologies. I was ready to move on, and I wanted her to see that. As I left the room, I could hear her calling after me. But I didn't turn back. I had plans, and they didn't involve her. I was ready to embrace my new normal, one where I could enjoy life without the weight of betrayal dragging me down. But I also knew that things were about to get much more complicated. The thrill of revenge was intoxicating, and I wanted to make sure Sarah felt the sting of my newfound happiness. It was time to put my plan into action. As the days turned into weeks, I reveled in my newfound freedom. Each meal at a Michelin-star restaurant felt like a personal triumph, a reminder of the life I could lead without Sarah. The thrill of indulging in finer things without her presence filled me with a sense of power I hadn't felt in a long time. I was no longer the man who had been sidelined in his own relationship. I was Mark, and I was reclaiming my life. However, a darker thought began to brew in my mind: revenge. I wanted Sarah to understand the consequences of her actions, to feel the emptiness that came with betrayal. I knew she was still seeing Matt, sneaking around while pretending everything was fine. Between us, it was time to turn the tables and make her realize what she had lost. I started devising a plan. The first step was to let her see me flourishing without her. I began posting my culinary adventures on social media, sharing photos of my exquisite meals, the gorgeous restaurant interiors, and the excitement in my eyes as I indulged in new experiences. I knew she followed me online, and I wanted her to witness my transformation. Dinner at Le Gourmet tonight. I typed in my latest post, accompanied by a shot of a perfectly plated dish that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I added a caption about how much I loved trying new things and embracing life to the fullest. The likes and comments poured in, and I could only smile as I imagined Sarah reading those words, her envy simmering just beneath the surface. The next step was to be more visible in the social scene. I started frequenting bars and events where I knew I'd run into people from our old circle. I wanted to create a buzz about my newfound zest for life, and I did. Friends were stunned to see the change in me. They complimented my style, remarked on my confidence, and asked what had brought about such a transformation. Oh, just some self-discovery, I'd say with a casual grin, allowing the curiosity to linger. I made it sound like I was well on my way to a grand reinvention, and in a way I was. The more I immersed myself in this new life, the more I felt a sense of liberation. But it wasn't enough. I wanted Sarah to see my happiness firsthand. I schemed to orchestrate an encounter that would make her squirm. I reached out to a few mutual friends, suggesting we throw a gathering at my place. My plan was set. I would invite Sarah, knowing she wouldn't be able to resist the social scene, and I would be surrounded by friends who were eager to see the new Mark. On the night of the gathering, I pulled out all the stops. I transformed my living room into an inviting space filled with soft lighting, tasteful music, and a spread of gourmet snacks I had prepared myself. The wine flowed smoothly, and laughter filled the air as friends mingled, enjoying each other's company. When Sarah walked in, her expression was a mix of surprise and dismay. She looked around at the lively gathering, her eyes landing on me as I held court among my friends, effortlessly charming everyone with my newfound charisma. I greeted her with a smile, watching as she struggled to mask her discomfort. "Hey, glad you could make it," I said, my voice dripping with feigned sincerity. "Thanks for inviting me," she replied, her voice barely audible over the chatter. I could see her trying to gauge the situation, her eyes flitting around the room as she observed the buzz of activity. She had expected to find me mopping, perhaps wallowing in self-pity, but here I was, alive, vibrant, and thriving. Throughout the evening, I made sure to include Sarah in conversations, highlighting my new adventures and successes. I mentioned my latest culinary experiences with exaggerated enthusiasm, weaving tales of the incredible people I had met and the unforgettable dishes I had tasted. Each time I saw her flinch at my stories, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. As the night wore on, I noticed her growing increasingly uncomfortable. It was as if she was grappling with her own insecurities, realizing what she had lost. I reveled in the realization that my plan was working. Eventually, as the evening began to wind down, I found myself standing next to Sarah in the kitchen, the room buzzing with laughter from my friends. I decided to push her a little further. "So, how's everything with you and Matt?" I asked casually, trying to mask the twisted satisfaction I felt at bringing up the subject. Her face went pale, and I could see the embarrassment wash over her. "We're just friends," she stammered, but I could tell she was flustered. "Just friends. Sounds like a lot of time spent together for just friends," I replied, my tone laced with mockery. "I guess I'm glad to know you're not too lonely anymore." She shot me an incredulous look, her eyes narrowing. "You have no idea what you're talking about, Mark. You don't know anything about my life," she snapped, but I could see the cracks in her facade. "True, but I know enough to see when someone is trying to fill a void," I said, leaning closer. "Good luck with that." With that, I walked away, leaving her to stew in her thoughts. I couldn't help but feel a rush of exhilaration at having held my ground. It was a small victory, but it was a reminder that I was taking control of my life. As I watched her from a distance, I realized I was finally moving forward. I was embracing the happiness I deserved, and the taste of revenge was sweeter than any meal I had enjoyed. I was done being the victim. I was ready to thrive. Little did I know, the next steps I took would be even more pivotal in this twisted journey of healing and revenge. The aftermath of the gathering left Sarah and me in a peculiar stalemate. She had come to the party expecting to find me sulking, perhaps even begging for her forgiveness. Instead, she witnessed a version of me that was confident and unapologetic. I could see the confusion and frustration etched on her face, and it felt like I had won a small battle. However, I knew this was just one moment in a much larger scheme. I was determined to push this further. As the days passed, I continued to post about my culinary escapades, each post meticulously crafted to highlight the joy I was experiencing. I wanted Sarah to see that I was not just moving on, I was thriving. My social media became a gallery of my adventures, filled with vibrant images of food, laughter, and new friends. I even started receiving messages from people asking to join me for future outings, which only fueled my sense of empowerment. But I wasn't done with my plan. I wanted to take things up a notch. The idea of using Sarah's own friends against her began to take shape in my mind. I reached out to a few of them, mentioning my renewed love for life and how I was embracing new experiences. I suggested we all get together for dinner, and they seemed eager to join. However, I had a more intricate idea in mind. I wanted to organize a dinner party and invite both Sarah and Matt, the chef. After all, who would expect me to pull a stunt like that? I figured if I could create a scenario where they had to face each other, where Sarah had to confront the reality of her choices while surrounded by friends, it would serve as a powerful reminder of the consequences of her actions. I spent days preparing for this event, choosing a theme that revolved around a fusion of culinary styles, an ironic nod to the affair that had shattered our lives. I sent out invitations, carefully wording them to create the impression of an exciting opportunity for everyone involved. The night was set, a beautiful Saturday evening. On the night of the dinner, I meticulously arranged the table with elegant dishes and fine wine. I wanted to create an atmosphere that was both sophisticated and inviting. As the guests began to arrive, I felt a rush of excitement mixed with anxiety. This was it. Sarah walked in, looking stunning as always, but I could see her stiffen when she noticed Matt had arrived. He wore an air of casual confidence, completely oblivious to the tension brewing beneath the surface. I greeted them both with a smile, masking the anticipation that bubbled inside me. Welcome, everyone. Tonight we're going to explore a fusion of flavors, a mix of culinary worlds just like our lives, I announced, raising my glass for a toast. I could see Sarah's eyes darting between me and Matt, her expression a blend of confusion and dread. As the evening progressed, I made sure to keep the conversation flowing, dropping hints about the dynamic between Sarah and Matt. You know, Matt here really knows how to create magic in the kitchen. It's incredible how he can transform simple ingredients into something extraordinary, I remarked, casting a knowing glance in Sarah's direction. Her lips pressed into a tight line, but I could see her tension start to rise. I watched as she tried to mask her discomfort, engaging in small talk with other guests, but I could tell she was preoccupied. She wouldn't escape the reality of her choices tonight. When we moved to the dining table for the main course, I made sure the seating arrangements placed Sarah right next to Matt. As we dug into the meal, I encouraged everyone to share their thoughts. So, Matt, what inspired this dish? I asked, turning the spotlight toward him as if I was merely interested in the food. Oh, it's all about balance, he began, his eyes sparkling with enthusiasm as he explained the intricacies of the flavors. But I could see Sarah's discomfort growing. The tension hung heavy in the air, and I relished the moment. As we finished dinner, I decided to up the ante. I poured myself a glass of wine and smiled as I raised my glass once more, this time to make a point rather than a toast. Here, to new experiences, to taking risks, and to discovering who we truly are, I said, my gaze fixed on Sarah. Sometimes those risks lead us to unexpected places. I could see her face flush with embarrassment and anger, and for a brief moment I felt a rush of satisfaction. I was finally making her feel the weight of her actions. After dinner, I suggested we move to the living room for dessert and coffee. As we settled in, I noticed Sarah's tension had reached a boiling point. She leaned closer to me, her voice low. "What the hell was that, Mark? Are you trying to make a scene?" I shrugged, feigning innocence. "Just trying to provide a memorable evening." "Isn't that what friends do?" Her expression darkened and a flicker of anger crossed her face. "You're being childish," she hissed, but I could see her frustration blending with guilt. "Childish? Maybe I'm just reminding you that you're not the only one who can have a good time," I shot back, feeling emboldened. As the night continued, the atmosphere crackled with tension. I could see Sarah struggling to maintain her composure while sharing space with Matt, the very source of her betrayal. Eventually, she slipped outside, needing a moment to breathe. I followed her out, allowing myself a moment to collect my thoughts. This was the climax of my plan. I found her leaning against the railing, her face illuminated by the moonlight. "Mark, what do you think you're accomplishing here?" she asked, her voice trembling but fierce. "Just wanted to remind you of the choices you made. I'm moving on, Sarah, and you can't pretend like everything is fine," I replied, my heart racing. "I made a mistake, Mark," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I never wanted to hurt you. But you did, and now you have to face the consequences," I said, my voice steady. We stood there in silence, the weight of our past hanging between us. I could see the realization flickering in her eyes, a recognition of the distance that had grown between us and the irrevocable choices that had led us here. As I turned to head back inside, I felt a surge of relief. I had finally laid bare the truth of our situation. I was taking control, not only of my life, but of the narrative that had unfolded over the past few months. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I could thrive without her, without the remnants of our shattered marriage. The night had been a success, a small victory in my ongoing journey toward healing and self-discovery. Little did I know, though, that the real test was just around the corner, waiting to push me further down the path of resilience and self-empowerment. The aftermath of the dinner party lingered in the air like a storm cloud refusing to dissipate. Sarah returned inside with a forced smile, trying to mask the turmoil I knew was brewing beneath her surface. I could see the conflict in her eyes. She was caught between the life she had chosen and the man she had once loved. In the following days, I felt the tension shift between us. Sarah was trying to be more present, engaging in conversations and attempting to act as though nothing had happened. But I could see right through her facade. I was in control now, and I wasn't about to let her revert to the status quo. I continued my culinary adventures, sharing photos and updates online, but I also started documenting my growing social life. I was meeting new people, exploring different venues, and embracing the single life with a vigor I hadn't experienced in years. I even joined a few local foodie groups, where I began to forge connections with people who shared my interests. Each evening, as I returned home from another fabulous outing, I could feel Sarah's eyes on me. I had become a stranger in my own house, and the realization was both exhilarating and unsettling. She would often try to engage me in conversations, asking about my day, but I kept my responses brief, not wanting to give her the satisfaction of knowing how much I was enjoying life. One night, as I walked in after dining at an upscale sushi restaurant, I found Sarah sprawled on the couch, looking utterly defeated. The television played in the background, but her attention was elsewhere. She glanced up at me, her expression vulnerable. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice soft. I paused for a moment, weighing my options. I could feel the tension in the air. The time for confrontation was coming. "Talk about what? How you've been seeing Matt behind my back?" I replied, unable to mask the bitterness in my tone. "Mark, please," she said, her eyes pleading. "I was wrong. I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to explain." I crossed my arms, the urge to hear her out battling with my desire to keep her at arm's length. "Fine, explain," I said, my tone icy. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "After we hired Matt, I thought it would be a fun arrangement. I didn't set out to fall for him, but things just happened. It was never about you or what we had. I was feeling lonely and he was there. Is that supposed to make it better?" I interrupted, anger bubbling to the surface. "You used our chef to fill a void. You made choices that hurt me. You can't just excuse it away." because you felt lonely." "I know," she admitted, her voice breaking. "But I've realized something. I don't want to lose you. I thought I could have both, something exciting with him and the stability with you. But now I see how selfish that was." I narrowed my eyes, trying to gauge her sincerity. "You think talking is enough? You think I'll just forget what you did?" "No, I don't expect you to forgive me right away. This isn't just a matter of saying sorry. I want to show you that I can change," she pleaded. I sighed, a mix of frustration and resignation washing over me. "How do you plan on doing that?" "By trying to win me back while still seeing him. I can't trust you, Sarah. You shattered everything we built." Her expression shifted, anger creeping into her demeanor. "You think you're better off without me. You think you'll just move on and forget about what we had." "Trust me, I'm doing just fine," I replied, the edge in my voice sharper than intended. "In fact, I'm enjoying life more than I ever have. You should have thought about that before you decided to cheat." The conversation hung in the air, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. For a moment I thought about the life we had built together, the good memories interspersed with the painful ones. I had loved her fiercely, and the betrayal cut deeper than I wanted to admit. "I get that I messed up," she said, her voice trembling. "But I want to prove to you that I can change. Can't we at least try to work through this? I don't want to lose you." I stared at her, searching for the truth behind her words, but all I could see was the shattered trust that had once been a solid foundation for our marriage. "You need to understand that you've broken something that can't easily be fixed. I need time to think about what I want." With that, I turned away, leaving her standing there, a mix of regret and desperation etched on her face. I needed space to process everything, to figure out what this meant for me moving forward. That night, I lay awake in bed, my mind racing with memories and emotions. I replayed every moment of our relationship, from our first days of love to the painful unraveling of trust. I realized I was at a crossroads. I could either cling to the remnants of our marriage or embrace the freedom I had discovered in her absence. The next day, I made a decision. I called a lawyer to discuss the next steps toward separation. It was time to take definitive action. I couldn't let Sarah's pleas for reconciliation cloud my judgment. I had spent too long being the one left in the shadows of her choices. I was ready to embrace a new chapter of my life, one where I could finally put myself first. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to carve out a future that reflected the person I had become. As I hung up the phone, a sense of relief washed over me. I was taking control, and there was no turning back. The end of one chapter meant the beginning of another, and I was ready to write my own story, one filled with hope, empowerment, and the promise of a better tomorrow. The decision to consult a lawyer marked a turning point in my life. The following days were filled with a whirlwind of emotions: relief, anxiety, anticipation, and an undercurrent of sadness. It was surreal to think about ending my marriage, but the weight of betrayal had become too heavy to bear. I was ready to move forward, leaving the pain behind. I started preparing for what lay ahead. The lawyer advised me on the legalities of separation and the importance of documenting everything. I began gathering our financial records and making a list of shared assets. I wanted to ensure that I approached this with clarity and purpose, not allowing emotions to cloud my judgment. Meanwhile, Sarah's behavior shifted as well. She seemed more desperate, trying to reach out to me in various ways. One evening, she left a note on the kitchen counter, apologizing again for what had happened and expressing her desire to work on our relationship. I felt a flicker of guilt, but I quickly brushed it away. I had to stay strong. I continued my culinary escapades, exploring new restaurants and meeting new friends. Every meal was a reminder of how far I had come. I was reclaiming my life, savoring each experience like a delicious dish that nourished my soul. It wasn't just about the food, it was about rediscovering who I was outside of the confines of my marriage. As the days turned into weeks, I went to therapy to help navigate the emotional fallout from the divorce. It was a safe space to process my feelings and gain perspective. I learned to let go of the anger and resentment that had built up inside me. The therapy sessions were cathartic, allowing me to understand that while my marriage had ended, I had the power to shape my future. Finally, the day arrived for the formal meeting with my lawyer to discuss the next steps in filing for separation. I walked into the office with nerves in my stomach, but I held my head high. This was a significant step toward reclaiming my independence. As we sat down, my lawyer laid out the details of the process. "We'll file the paperwork, and then you'll receive a court date for the hearing," she explained, her tone professional yet empathetic. "It's important to remain calm and collected throughout this process. It can take time, but you're doing the right thing." After our meeting, I stepped out into the sunshine, feeling a mix of apprehension and liberation. I had taken control of my life, making choices that aligned with who I wanted to be. I didn't know what the future held, but I was ready to face it head-on. In the weeks that followed, I continued to thrive. I embraced new experiences, traveled to places I had always wanted to visit, and explored new culinary delights. I began to enjoy my own company, realizing that I didn't need someone else to find happiness. I was whole on my own. One evening, while dining at a trendy new restaurant, I struck up a conversation with a woman sitting at the bar. Her name was Emily, and we shared a mutual love for food and adventure. We talked for hours, laughing and sharing stories about our lives. I felt a spark I hadn't experienced in a long time, and for the first time since the separation, I felt hope. As I walked home that night, I realized that this was the beginning of a new chapter. I was no longer defined by my past. I was free to write my own story, a story filled with passion, joy, and the promise of new beginnings. In the quiet moments of reflection, I thought about Sarah and the choices that had led us here. I wished her well, but I understood that I had to prioritize my own happiness. I had learned that love should never come at the cost of self-respect, and that sometimes letting go is the bravest thing one can do. As I settled into my new life, I reminded myself that every ending brings a new beginning. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, fully aware that I was stronger than I had ever been. No longer trapped by betrayal, I was finally free to explore the world on my terms. And with that realization, a smile spread across my face, knowing I was embarking on a journey of endless possibilities.